Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Today we are digging into the always juicy topic of model competition. Specifically, Elon Musk's XAI has released their long-awaited flagship model Grok-3. In fact, the launch unveiled a family of models built around the Grok-3 architecture. The flagship model competes against OpenAI's GPT-4 but there's also a mini version that's designed for speed. The company will also release reasoning versions of the model in each size shortly. Users, for example, will be able to engage something called Big Brain Mode to add more reasoning time for more difficult queries. And XAI also introduced a mode called Deep Search. Deep Search uses a form of rudimentary agent to search the web and Twitter/X posts to compile long-form reports, obviously now in a similar way to how Deep Research works with OpenAI. There's also a forthcoming voice mode, which will be rolled out in about a week, according to the announcements. Grok-3 is first available to Premium Plus subscribers on X, but M1 Astra, an Apple insider, also claims that XAI will launch a Grok Pro tier at $30 a month or $300 per year. It seems like that subscription might be required to use advanced features like the Deep Search voice mode and Big Brain mode. Now, as these new models come online, Elon announced that Grok 2 would be open sourced in the coming months. He said, "Our general approach is that we will open source the last version when the next version is fully out. When Grok 3 is mature and stable, which is probably within a few months, then we'll open source Grok 2. Sam Altman has flagged that he's considered doing the same with OpenAI's older models as well, so maybe that becomes the new norm. Now, one of the reasons that Grok 3 has been highly anticipated is that it's the first model that's trained on a larger scale data center. Last month, Elon claimed that the model was trained using 10 times the compute of Grok 2, which was achieved, of course, with the Colossus supercluster, the first training cluster capable of networking 100,000 NVIDIA H100s. Grok 3 was therefore viewed as the first real test of whether pre-training scaling had hit a wall with the last generation of models. Now, of course, as is the case with every launch, people are poring over the benchmarks. When it comes to math, science, and coding benchmarks, Grok 3 Mini achieved parity with Gemini 2.0 Pro and DeepSeek v3, and the full-size Grok model, and of course this is according to XAI itself, outperformed on each test by a noticeable margin. Important to note, this was only comparing leading non-reasoning models, with Grok 3 not putting up the same performance as OpenAI's O3 Mini on these tests. For the reasoning models, both sizes of Grok 3 seem fairly competitive, with O1 on low inference settings and outperform O3 Mini on high inference settings. This would imply that the reasoning version of Grok 3 isn't on the same level as the full-size O3. Given that we don't have access to either model at this stage, we don't know for sure. XAI noted that Grok 3 reasoning is still in beta and will have further post-training before its full release. There wasn't a huge boost from scaling pre-training, but the gains were there. Professor Ethan Malik writes, "Based on the early stats, looks like Grok 3 base is going to be a very solid frontier model, suggesting pre-training scaling law continues with linear improvements to 10x compute. In essence, Grok 3 doesn't invalidate those scaling laws, but it could also suggest that much larger training clusters are needed to see paradigm-changing improvements." One benchmark that many people took note of was Chatbot Arena, where users vote on which AI output they prefer. While the metric is inherently subjective, it gives a sense of how the models will perform in the market. Investor Gavin Baker writes, "Grok 3 is the first model ever to score over 1400 on Chatbot Arena and outperforms the best publicly available reasoning models from OpenAI and Google. XAI was founded 13 years after DeepMind and 8 years after OpenAI and is now ahead of both, the SR-71 Blackbird of AI labs." Baker did, of course, then note that he is a little biased as an XAI investor. AI Breakfast wrote, "For everyday users, the Chatbot Arena is the only benchmark that matters. Grok 3 is officially the best LLM. Given the speed at which XAI achieved this, they will only widen the gap over time." A more complete review comes from Andrej Karpathy. And although Karpathy was a co-founder at OpenAI, most people view his take as inherently unbiased given his lack of affiliation today and the general credibility that he has. He wrote a long review on X saying, "I was given early access to Grok 3 earlier today, making me, I think, one of the first few who could run a quick vibe check." He goes into a long review, sharing some of his tests around thinking, exploring the deep search feature, trying a bunch of random LLM gotchas, and ultimately here's the conclusion he came to. He writes, "Grok 3 plus thinking feels somewhere around the state-of-the-art territory of OpenAI's strongest model, so O1 Pro at $200 a month, and slightly better than DeepSeek R1 and Gemini 2.0 Flash thinking, which is quite incredible considering that the team started from scratch around a year ago. This timescale to state-of-the-art territory is unprecedented. Do also keep in mind the caveats. The models are stochastic and may give slightly different answers each time, and it is very early, so we'll have to wait for a lot more evaluations over a period of the next few days to weeks. The early LLM Arena results look quite encouraging indeed. For now, big congrats to the XAI team. They clearly have huge velocity and momentum." Now, the larger context around the Grok 3 launch is the ongoing feud between Elon and Sam Altman, And indeed, it's very difficult to cover this. Elon especially is more divisive than he's ever been, and it is enormously difficult to find people who can separate whatever they think about Elon in general from their reviews of anything that he touches. Here's how Gary Marcus summed up where this leaves the competition, which I think is fairly reflective of what others think as well. He writes, 1, Sam Altman can breathe easy for now. 2, no game changers, no major leap forward here. Hallucinations haven't been magically solved, etc. 3, that said, OpenAI's moat keeps diminishing, so price wars will continue and profits will continue to be elusive for everyone except NVIDIA. 4, pure pre-training scaling has clearly failed to produce AGI. OpenAI leaker Jimmy Apples writes, strong model, the main thing is the speed with which they caught up. I think it lives up to expectations, strong offering, good dollar value. He then prodded Sam Altman to release 4.5, which we know is coming soon. Earlier in the day, when someone had told him to release 4.5 the same day to steal the show, Altman wrote, that wouldn't be very nice, ellipsis. To me, one of the things that really stands out is just how absolutely saturated these benchmarks are and how little I find myself compelled by them when a new model comes out. Ethan Mollick again got at this writing, another thing Grok-3 highlights is the urgent need for better batteries of tests and independent testing authorities. Public benchmarks are both meh and saturated, leaving a lot of AI testing to be like food reviews based on taste. If AI is critical to work, we need more. He continues, GPQA, Diamond, and MMLU and ArcAGI look nothing like actual work. He also adds, and this is something I completely agree with, I'm surprised no large IT consulting or even national standards agency hasn't stepped in with large-scale batteries of private tests, especially given the hundreds of billions of dollars being invested. This is a hugely salient point. Ultimately, it doesn't matter for the vast majority of users how they do on these benchmarks. It matters how they perform in real work settings. And speaking of OpenAI and Elon's fight, the OpenAI board has now formally rejected Elon's $97 billion bid to take over the nonprofit. In a unanimous vote, the board decided that the takeover was, quote, not in the best interest of OpenAI's mission. A statement from Chairman Brett Taylor said, OpenAI is not for sale, and the board has unanimously rejected Mr. Musk's latest attempt to disrupt his competition. Any potential reorganization of OpenAI will strengthen our nonprofit and its mission to ensure AGI benefits all of humanity. OpenAI lawyers have insisted that Musk's bid doesn't set the price for the nonprofit, which will need to be paid during the conversion to a for-profit company. Separately, the Financial Times reports that the company is considering granting special voting rights to the nonprofit board in an attempt to ensure that they aren't a target for a hostile takeover from Musk following the for-profit conversion. Meanwhile, XAI itself is heading back to the well for another funding round. Bloomberg reports that the company is seeking to raise $10 billion at a $75 billion valuation, with sources saying that existing investors, including Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, and Valor Equity Partners, all participating in the talks, which are still at an early stage. A significant portion of the new funding seems as though it would pay for upgraded chips at XAI's data centers. On Friday, Bloomberg reported that the company was close to closing a $5 billion deal with Dell to provide servers powered by NVIDIA's Blackwell GB200 chips. So ultimately, friends, where we are is that the proof is going to be in the pudding. A lot of folks over the next few weeks will be testing Grok-3 and seeing how it compares to the latest ChatGPT and Claude models. But it also feels to me like this is the beginning of model update season, not the end, with both Anthropic and OpenAI promising new models coming soon. So we could have a lot of new developments in the near future, which is obviously nothing but good for all of us users. For now, though, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace